everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. What are we on? Episode 18 already. Time flies. People are talking about how it's already Wednesday again, and I agree totally. I was half convinced it was Tuesday most of the day. Just everything is flying by. How is everyone doing? Hello, we got lots of people on Twitch already, a couple people on YouTube. David, Chop, Maurice, Michelangelo, Joel, and then you're asking who made the intro theme. I think I've actually got it linked below in Twitch. It's Ronald Jenkins, and I really like his music in general, so I got a license to an entire album. And then we got Spear Factory, Tobias, Trey, Spear Factory, Gumbo, what's going on, Electron, Pier, Sid, Pro Tools. Hi everybody, Animation Hamster, Mick, Ruckus, Matt Dog, Dean, it just keeps going, so many names. Third Eye, Wooster, Prism, hi everybody. Gryptic, welcome. Hi everybody. Hope things are going well. Oh, even Rachel's here, and then we got Soren, Nova. Yeah, good crowd today, considering I didn't even put a tweet out about it. So, what is new? Everybody start getting those questions together while we cover any news. Specifically, make sure I can see the link to the artist, and otherwise I can't tackle it. Otherwise, make sure that you call out the specific effect that you're interested in. And you can put links in Twitch, but you can't on YouTube. So on YouTube, you'd have to go over to Twitch or just type out a question. So let's see what's going on. Well, barring any problems, I'm going to be releasing Rocket Lasso's next plugin a week from today. So next week's live stream will be all about the new plugin. I've been putting a couple images out. I've been trying to decide if any of these animations I can show without it being too much of a spoiler. And I'm not sure. Could be pretty big spoilers, but maybe just because you guys are my live stream group, just don't go posting this. This is one of the bigger animations. I'm still building the commercial, and these are some of the raw animations I've been putting together. So we haven't really talked about it, but every single one of these that you're about to see is going to be showing off an effect made with a new tool. It's a spline tool, and I'll be releasing more information soon, but we just don't let too much information out ahead of time. So I'm going to switch to... So you'll be seeing a whole bunch more of that stuff in a week when I have the commercial all put together and all the tutorials, and it launches live. For the most part, all the big information will be out on the day where it releases, maybe the day before. I'm probably going to release, I might do a soft launch. This is for everybody who's paying attention. If you're not already part of the Slack channel, you can head over to rocketlasso.com and join the Slack channel. And I'm probably going to do a soft release on the Slack channel just to make sure that the store is working. There's not any direct problems. That way we can iron all those out before the next day when I kind of do it super publicly on all social media and everything. So keep that in mind. So soft launch on maybe Tuesday night on the US time. But yeah, that's a little preview, an animation I put together, and it's going to be a whole bunch more stuff. So we'll talk about that next week, and should be good. Let me think. Is there anything else to cover? Not really. Start getting those questions together. I see we got some posted up above. I'm just checking out any chat that's coming through. Let's see. Yeah, we got questions coming in, so let's start tackling them. Switching over to the proper screen. Here we are in S24. Somebody, I saw a question. I saw something I wanted to. Oh yeah, Third Eye. That is a Megascan asset. I have been playing with Megascans recently. I was like, ooh, I get that. It kind of inspired me to do that animation. So totally. Mick got. Oh nope, somebody Gumbo beat you on the question. So, what would a no particle approach be to sand writing? If this is anything like what I think it's going to be, I don't know that there is a good answer to it. So yeah, you got an actual video here. So writing in the sand from Ginny Salcido, and presumably, yep, it is a stick dragging across the sand and creating all these lumps. Now, and it gets washed away. Let me think. I mean, I've actually, during some of the bonus streams in the early days, we were trying to do a bunch of stuff with sand, and we were getting it to look pretty cool, but you could only do very, very, very small volumes of it until everything started to break. So, and believe me, I was pushing it. We were using X particles and pushing it as far as we could, and it just wasn't anywhere near the count that we needed it to be and be at all. I mean, it definitely wasn't interactable, but even to do preview animations, it's like, okay, 10 minutes to see if 30 frames of this looked okay, change a parameter, do it again. So that was limitations there. So we definitely want a no particle solution here. The bigger trick is, my instinct says you want to do this with volumes, and it would be really easy to go and draw some of these things with volumes, but then you need a sand material, and that sand material needs to be stuck to your geometry. So by its very nature, like as that's scraping, it's revealing sand that wasn't seen earlier. So how would you go about having a material? You need something that could get deformed. I don't have a process in my head yet, but imagine if we had a cut down in the middle here so those could actually separate. So we actually map some UVs on here and stick it. And then as that spread from the center point, those points would deform outward, would be the hope. And then you could reveal sort of unrelated geometry underneath. And then maybe this edge, we could have some things like scale or flip, not scale, you wouldn't want to scale, but maybe we could flip up like those little imperfections. Let's see if we jump back. You see how these are popping up on the edge? But yeah, they're very distinct. I mean, we wouldn't be able to match that perfectly. And then you have all of this stuff happening on the edge, which presumably, and let's put this up at a higher quality. Presumably, I guess it's not super translating that you can see the sand like translating from where it is up. So I feel like we could fake that. But you can see if you're paying attention to the sand as it's pulled, you see that the, I guess it pushes out a little bit. Oh yeah, there's a little bit, which is, I kind of want to do that. So I don't know. Could we deform the geometry away? This is a tricky one. Very tricky. We can deal with some materials in a moment. We need to think about the mechanics of it. Like I said, volume feels like a nice way of generating some of the geometry, but it honestly feels more like a Boolean operation, which is always dangerous, but we can do better settings and randomize until we got one that actually worked. And I bet you we could come up with a way of, is there a way I can think of to spread them out? Maybe. It couldn't be dynamic because point count will be changing. But maybe it could deform the geometry underneath. I don't know. There's a lot of layers here. So let's start tinkering, and we're going to look at some very specific elements of potential rigs. So if we're going to get the sand spreading out, which I think is a nice detail, how would I get these to flow outward and away? Like I said, we can't do soft body. Well, maybe we could do soft body. Can you do a soft body object inside of a bool? That's the first question. So if I were to make a cube and a cube, move one cube over here, make that a soft body, and then put both these in a bool, A subtract B, will that see it? Yes, it does seem to see it. Turn on SSAO, and let's see. Yeah, it's sort of working. Let's put a couple subdivisions in there because we'll definitely be having subdivisions 5 by 5 by 5. Bunk. Yeah, okay, well, that maybe that will work. So a thought right now would be turning off gravity, Control D, dynamics, no gravity. Adding a soft body tag. Soft body and the first thing is collision. I'm not going to worry about self collisions at all. And then under our soft body, I also think I'm just going to zero out everything. So 0, 0, 0. So it's nothing should happen right now if we have play, because it's just going to be sitting there. But the main idea is that we want it to spread out from some central point, and we're going to need some sort of stick drawing through. We'll keep it sort of generic, making a capsule shape, radius of 5, and move it up until visually, yeah, the circle sitting right in the end, creating a null, and that null will contain the capsule, just so that I have this thing I can pivot around. In fact, I'll even put that into a secondary null. So if we're inclined, I could tilt this over a few degrees, and I still have my original null that's directly on the axis, so we could move this around. So the very first thought is, let's save the file. Save, and go to scene files. Yeah, I did make the folder. So as always mentioned, if you are following on Patreon, then you can get access to these scene files, and this is certainly going to be an interesting one. Drawing in the sand. Okay, cool. So this capsule is kind of a visual placeholder, but what I really want is, let's do a cylinder. So here's a cylindrical field that I'll give, well, let's just scale it down. And it can probably have a bit of a fall off like that. We're probably gonna need even more geometry. You can see right here that this is not intersecting with that many points. Just keep it quick. I'm gonna scale this one down. All right, so this field needs to affect a field force. So forces, field force. And right now it's only pushing away 5. It's pretty mild. We'll do 25 because that should definitely give us a visual. And then drag in this field force to give us some directions. And essentially it should be pushing out in every direction in a big radial. And these dynamics should be seeing it, and there's nothing to hold it together coherently. So the hope would be that these points are just going to drift away, and they'll drift away forever because nothing will stop them. Oh, and it looks like it's backwards, so it's attracting them. Field force, object, direction, invert. So now we'll see that those push away. Pew! They're pushing away really strong, but like I said, I put a relatively strong number in there. So we can drop that to 5 because now we know it's doing something. And now it will spread them out quickly. And then as soon as they're outside of that range, we want it to chill out. So when it comes to, I wonder if, I don't think there is such a thing. Yeah, I don't think there is. If we do like 99% damping on all of these, I don't think that's going to have any effect. Those will just keep going. Something I'm kind of wondering about is if we put some stiffness in here, but we give it a really small elastic limit, but we put a lot of damping in there. It's a thought. So let's see. Oh, okay, that kind of did something. You see how that immediately put on the brakes? But we have to be careful. There's a bunch of things we have to keep in mind. First of all, let's do less energy drain. I want to see what happens. No, see, it's kind of wiggly, so I think that elastic limit is maybe not enough. What's our scale right now? So that is about 10 across. So this stiffness, the stiffness of elastic limit of 1, I would think would be enough. Still really wiggly, but let's say 0.1 on the stiffness. It's not breaking the spring, which is what I needed to do. We can slow that down, but my thought would be when we move this around, and I will add a vibrate tag on there, And the vibrate tag will control the position. Let's go up to 200 by 200 and set that to 0.1. So it goes nice and slow. So what my thought here is that those are going to push away, but then you see they keep on moving and returning back to their previous position. We don't want that. I'm going to also tell this overall object to follow the position by 15 and the rotation by 15, which should hopefully lock down the overall object so that these forces are not propagating through and making it drift. So you can see we get a bit of a reaction, but it's just not breaking the way I want it to. We've got options. That was just my first thought. So yeah, the stiffness I was hoping it would break it, but it's not. So we're going to kill the stiffness concept. You see this is just spreading those points back out again. So now can we drain the energy out via my next go-to is going to be a force friction. So I'm going to say 101. Yeah, you see that now is slowing them down. So let's give those, well, we got push and pull we got to do here. So how quickly do we want those to slow down? And that's actually not bad. And then how do we make these be a little bit coherent with each other? Maybe we do want some shear and some flexion. Wow, look, even that 1%, well, I guess there's a lot of damping, but even at 1%, that is having a huge effect. Okay, so you see it's kind of a gentle thing, but they're still trying to return. So let's get rid of the shear and maybe some flexion. Is that's still drifting, but yeah, that's giving a little bit of coherence to them. So can I put a brake on that and they become permanent? Yeah, that's not bad. So let's try a little bit more flexion. Yeah, okay. I mean, even this effect might be too much. I just want like a little bit of a scooting of all of the components. So that's not terrible. And give ourselves a few extra frames here just to see this drift around, because it's kind of moving in a very straight line in spite of moving on. Oh, that was a 2-2, so that's why it's very two-dimensional looking. Also, we'll just go to 1-1-1, 1-1-1. Okay. So let's see what happens if this kind of moves in an angle. Yeah, I mean, they're spreading out. It's, I feel like we can just make it weaker. Like this is the overall field force, but we can lower that even less. And now we can just hopefully see a little bit of an effect. That's too weak. 3. Yeah, that could work. It might break the bools and whatnot. So that's just one idea. Now, why were we doing that? Well, mostly, let's do a super generic material. I think we'll probably end up doing some redshift on this, but let's start out with a standard material. Dropping that on. And in the color channel, create a super old school checkerboard. And set this to 55 by 55. So we can see a ton of checkerboard. NA to get rid of lines. And now this is the idea. Hopefully you'll be able to see it now. Do you see how we can see these stretching? Although now that I see it with the pattern, I'm glad I did. You can see that because of the nature of these polygons, and they're very coherent, so they're meeting their neighbors. So that's the bad part of flexion. So I'm gonna get rid of the flexion, and let's just see what it does. So actually this is better, where you can see that it's just kind of deforming them on the edge, but then they start overshooting each other, and that's the bad part. Now, can we get away with a smooth, fixing that as a post effect? I don't even know what that will do. I'm gonna save this, save, smoothing, drop that in, and no stiffness. Hit play, and does this stiffness do anything? Seemingly not, but that's still potentially fine. Because then my next thought is like, okay, cool, this is doing that deforming for us. So then we would transfer it to a unrelated model via maybe a deformer. And if they're identical, let's do a morph. So I can say, oop, not a morph deformer. I want a morph tag rigging. And we'll do the pose morph. Pose morph, I would like it to take on the positions. And we've got the pose here. I'd like that to be a link to this external target. And hopefully that now means I can hide this original, and we'll see the effect translate to the secondary one. It is not, but I also didn't turn it on animate. Also, at some points, we might need to make these editable, but also basic. Let's increase this by 1. Yeah, not having any effect there. So let's see if we have to make these editable. And see if it translates over then. Yeah, now it immediately starts translating over. So let's keep that in mind. I kind of don't want to lose those. So I will add a recall tag, which is of course a plugin from Rocket Lasso, but that just makes it so I can go back and pull that back to that state if I need to. So now we can see, now you can see how this is deforming and matching that original. Actually, let me check something. Do I need to make both of them editable? Oh, okay. I don't need to make the original editable, only the secondary that we're actually putting the morph tag on. Okay, cool. Now that I've done that, I can create the smoothing. I put the smoothing on there, and now let's not go too far with it. So here's no smoothing. Whoa, it's kind of freaking out. That's one iteration of smoothing. 2, 3, 4. So as I do that, you can see how it's smoothing out those edges a bit. And we're getting it's a more coherent effect. It's not perfect, but it's definitely something. I'm very worried about the geometry that I want to deform here, because if we hide that, you see that this geometry is like a pretty big mess. Let's put a little stiffness in there. Yeah, a little stiffness can go a long way. Yeah, okay, see, that makes it more coherent. So let's see how that ends up looking. So now we're getting that slight spreading out effect without it breaking the geometry too much. So that's a thought. And if I put that material back on, let's see how that deformation looks. Yeah, it's something. I mean, that this is one element of it, and it's just an experiment. So that is working-ish. I'll give it a save. Okay. Now we need to take a bite out of it, and that's going to happen with a bool. Now, I think the best way to just take a bite out of this, it's going to be a little bit jittery, but I think our best bet is probably just a tracer. So here's that original null. Create a MoGraph tracer. And I want to trace forever every single frame. So that will draw a line now everywhere that we travel. And that line will be fed into a volume builder inside of a volume mesher. And I feel like we can go relatively, well, I guess we have to be somewhat reasonable here, because we're going to be doing a bool out of it, but it does create nice quads for us, so that's the helpful bit here. So what is the thickness of the stick again? It is 5, so the radius of this has to be 5. And then your voxel size always has to be, well, it doesn't have to be, but you're going to get much smoother if you lower the voxel size to smaller than whatever our current scale is. So that's even maybe a little hint smaller than our current object. Oh, another thing I thought is that if you put the density up to 1, that you'd pretty much be covered. But as you start getting smaller and smaller, it's actually a good idea to, it looks like here it's chunky enough where I'm not seeing a difference. But I've definitely found improvements if you're working with small scales of putting your density above 1. But I'm not seeing a visual difference between them right now. Okay, so that should be tracing out essentially a constant thickness of a blob. And so that's the hope there. You see how that's a little twitchy there, right? That might, let's try increasing the density. Yeah, as soon as I increase the density, see it stopped twitching. So let's try, I'm gonna hit play again, and I watch the blob as it moves away. Before, it was twitching, and now you see it's stable. And once again, that's because I increased the density. If I lower it, you can see it like kind of bouncing around a little bit. So just a little hint. Extra high density is gonna take a little longer to calculate, but it can give you potentially a nice result. All right, so that is a simple-ish step 2. So now we're going to ask a lot of cinema. this is asking a lot because we need to do two things. We need to take a Boolean byte out of this, but that is not a volume. If that's not a volume, well, yeah, there's going to be limitations here, because if I just drag this in underneath the bool and I say A subtract B, then actually I'm going to say A, you can't say A subtract B because it's not, that's, I guess A subtract B is the same as A without B in the circumstance, because 1 is not a volume. But you can now see it's doing a fine job of erasing out that geometry, and we're getting that deformation on the edge. So I'm still worried that there's probably going to be a couple little pops and things at different places. But you know what? Right now, that's not terrible. My worry is that we've got this volume mesher, and I need to only see half of it. We can hide the edges to a bit, to a degree, but let's see how well this works. Creating an instance of the object, and I want it to be after. I'm going to create another bool. So I'll put another bool and then create a cube, and that cube will sit 100 units up into the air. So now if I say A subtract B, that's going to chop it. At least that's what it should do. Okay, we'll have to keep in mind it doesn't disappear on the first frame because the volume doesn't exist yet. But you'll see right now that we're seeing kind of a cut. It's nice and flat. So what we really need is this bool to be A without B, and that just chops off the top. Now, these two bits of geometry will never match up, but let's see how stable it is and how slow it is. So rewind, save. I guess A without B does make it disappear, hopefully. So hitting play. You know, it's playing really nicely right now, better than I thought it would. So let's just see what happens. Because of the blob is, yeah, there's going to be a couple little twitches. I do not expect this to be 100% stable everywhere, but we're trying to make the big, super fancy, robust rig. But it's doing a not terrible job of pushing this stuff away. It is drifting a bit. I might crank that friction up some more. Although, yeah, you gotta be careful, because if I push this, I feel like once you push it past 1,000, it can explode. So let's rewind, save a new version. And hopefully that just causes it to drift a little bit less. It's a very simple setup, so it's clean what we're feeding in, so I'm hoping that that's stable and doesn't explode, but it doesn't look very different at a certain point. Okay, well, let's call that sort of working. And now, here's kind of the thing I'm most stumped on. One of the most important things would be, can we get this stuff to deform upward? That would be great if we could. To get kind of a, let's look at that reference again. You see how you get the kind of peak up on the edge a little bit? It would be great if we could get that. And honestly, I feel like maybe the tracer should be up a little bit higher, because right now we got this perfect wall where I feel like when you look at the reference that the walls are already tapered in a little bit. They're not 90 degrees down and then taper, but I'm not going to worry about that because this is working fairly cleanly so far. All right. The tension tag. Maybe a tension tag. I'm trying to think of is there anything that we can get an outline? Well, I don't even think that is strictly necessary because everything in the middle will be ignored. So this could possibly just be straight up deformation. So this is our sand flat, and this is our sand ditch. Put both of those into a null, and then create a, well, let's do a plane. So this plane will be a .deform. We're going to deform the point. It's going to super explode. I'm going to immediately change the transform space, not based on the node, but based on the effector, which is now indeed pushing it straight up because I want it on an absolute scale. You see that this just pushes everything up and down. So we'll leave that on Let's do 10. Well, I'll do 11 because it's quick to type. But that's just pushing that up. Now, if I say, let's limit this to the tracer. So the tracer currently lives inside of the volume. I think that's fine. If I put that inside of there, I can say, okay, I want you to sample the radius. And now you can see that it is bulging on the edges. So, okay, good so far. Under remapping, let's create a curve. And yeah, that's going to smooth it out is what we want. Yeah, look at that. So we get a nice curve pushing up. And then, yeah, I thought I was going to have to do a couple extra things, but that just seems to be working. It's pushing up this ground one, so that's the thing I'm not worried about. But the next thing that we need to do is, this is currently limited to anywhere within the radius of this tracer, but we can also limit it to a linear field. The linear field, I don't know if it's y plus or y minus. I always do it backwards. Let's do a thickness of 1, and there we go. Now you see if I move this up, it is saying like, oh, you can't affect other sections, or you can or cannot affect certain sections. We are working on a very small scale, so even a length of 1 is significant. So I'm going to say 0.1. And if this deformer wasn't on at all, this is where everything lives. So I'm going to say right there. So essentially nothing below this line should be affected. We could give it a bit of a fall off. And if we keep this flat and sand, I think it's reasonable to call this flat. If we turn this back on again, everything's pushed up. But now I say, okay, linear field, I want you to multiply on top of it. So now I think that only those edges are getting pushed up. And it seems pretty good. So let's see what we got. Rewind, save, play. It kind of did that initial pop right away, but once we get to this edge, it actually is doing a reasonably nice job of pushing the edge up. So once again, not too bad. Okay, still working better than I thought it would. Let's change the random seed of the stick just so it's not traveling the same path every time. Whoa, calm down over there. So that's traveling around seemingly just fine. All right. Now, yep, that's doing a nice, that's not too shabby. That's twitching around a little bit. I wonder if we could increase the sampling even more. I put that up to 11. As soon as I put up to 11, it's still twitching. It seems to be doing it less, but yeah, this is working pretty. I don't know. It's kind of a satisfying kind of movement it's doing through there. So I'm enjoying stepping through this rig very methodically. So let's jump up to the next stage. I'll save it as another version. And this one is, I gotta think of the way to do it, but it's pretty much these random lumps of sand is what I'm thinking. It's the trickiest part of what we're doing. Okay. Okay, so a couple things that I'm thinking. Temporarily, I'm going to turn off all of this because for a moment at least, we don't need to see any of that except for the tracer, okay? And even this deforming sand, we don't need to see. And I'll also visually hide it. Okay, so if I hit play, all we should have is, it's hidden now, so I'll just make a new tracer. So this tracer is now tracing that path, but we don't have a specific direction. How would I go about doing this? If I make a null, I'm going to tell the null to align to a spline. I'll put it after the tracer. It's a good idea to kind of be like, oh, that's first, second, third, fourth, and you just move things after. This is happening after the tracer, so we'll move it after. It is going to follow the tracer, and it's going to be tangential. And I would like it to be at 100%, so it's over here. Now, the hope is that this blue arrow is essentially always pointing in the direction of our stick. So the direction of travel of the stick. And indeed, you see it's actually doing a nice job of that. It's moving forward where the stick is. Oh, I just thought of a problem with the process I was about to do. Yeah, there might be other ways of compensating. Let's just see if this works. So there's that null. I'm going to make a duplicate of the null, delete the tag, and let's call this one A, and move it 2.5 units to that side. And then we'll take another one and call it B, and move it 2.5 on negative of that one. So there should be hopefully 2 nulls offset from that center point. So if I were to create another tracer, call this one tracer A, and tell it to trace A, and then another tracer, and call it to be tracer B, and trace B. Let's see what we get. Also, for clarity, turn on the color, and it'll make them kind of a pink. So tracers always have like one frame, but now the hope is, oh, it's a radius of 5, so those should be further. A should be 5 over, and B should be negative 5 over. Okay. So once again, we'll ignore kind of those initial frames. Just we'll try and maybe fix those later. But now the idea is that we're seeing these 2 trails that are now like the edge. Okay, so that is something. Now, that gives us an outside, some lines that are on the outside. So I guess let's figure out this tracer issue right away, because it needs to, this null, there's no tracer for it to exist on, so it doesn't know where to go. So it's just floating at 0. So in order for that to be on the tracer, it needs, let's say, this tag can override. This currently calculates at 0. So if I were to add another tag, let's put a rigging constraint, and now that's also calculating at 0. I'm going to say you have a transform, which is PSR. I want you to snap to the position. I guess, yeah, we won't get a rotation, but we will get hopefully get a position of this null, which is just the stick. And now that happens at 0. So you see that this has indeed moved. Well, no, it hasn't moved over. Let's see. Position of the stick. I thought that this tracer. Okay. I thought that if there was no length on the tracer, that it just wouldn't go anywhere. But it looks like if it's trying to find, this is trying to find a spline. If it can't find a spline, then it jumps to 0. So it's overriding what I thought we could do with this, because I thought to ignore it. Instead, it overrides and says, okay, there's no spline, go to 0. So if it's trying to go to 0, I don't know if this is a good idea, but if we take that tracer, put it into a connect object, and then make a we can't make a 1-point spline, but I can make a 2-point spline. Just make it length of 1, put that into the stick. Actually, it can't be in the stick, but I can put it in this connect. And if I tell this tracer to now go after that connect, if I move this over, is that, oh yeah, and then tell that to, yeah, it's going to the connect, but it might not see it at all. Let's let that start drawing. Yeah, it's not following it at all, but let me change the order. Nope, still not following at all, which means this is probably not being acknowledged as a spline, but we've got that workaround. We can feed that into a spline mask and tell it to follow the spline mask, and then switch the order again. No, still not following. It doesn't like this setup of mine. Yeah, this is still, it's not acknowledging that spline mask, unfortunately. Let's try to connect again. mean, okay, we sort of acknowledged it, but it's the wrong side, and I don't think I can do that. No, it doesn't like that either. Okay, well, that was getting a little bit weird anyway, so let's simplify back to regular tracer, and let me see if I can think of anything to make that not happen. Yeah, I'll try. I don't think it'll do something. I'm going to try going to -1 and just see if anything happens. And it still jumps. And then we don't want to skip this frame 0 because that can create problems. It's just a tracer issue. Yeah, neither of those unfortunately helped. They're fine ideas to try, but didn't work. We just need that to be in the correct spot. Now, I mean, I guess it's a little bit more manual. It's not the worst thing in the world, but let's see if this works just to improve it. If I say transform, back to kind of the original plan, I'm going to say transform, snap to the original stick. But that's going to get overridden by this, but let's just keyframe the enable. So at frame 1, yes, that's turned on, but at frame 0, so rewinding to the beginning, we'll say, okay, but now you're off. So if it's off and then suddenly turns on, let's see if that can handle it. Yeah, so we're ignoring the first frame. Like I said, we don't have a good rotation in the beginning. I'm going to ignore that for now. Keep in mind that we could fix that if we had a set path that's traveling. We could know what the initial direction is, but right now, we're putting different random seeds in, so I don't see any need to fix that. But you know, now we're overriding for a single frame. And anyway, going back to the original thing I've been saying here is because this calculates before the tracer. Like, yes, it's constantly trying to snap to the stick, but at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, but it gets ignored because it's getting overridden. It would try jump, and then this is saying, no, I've actually got a different position for you, so it jumps to that new position. Okay. Anyway, now let's see if we can get the most basic of this idea going. So the most basic would be a cube inside of a cloner. Shrink it way down. I'll keep it extra tiny. Move this down below these tracers. I wonder if we could put these in the connect. It'd be nice if we could, but we might not be able to. So the object will be that connect. Let's hit play. And yeah, see, oh, well, yeah, it changed to, it's confused. This might work if I do the tracer trick or the mask trick. Bling. Yeah, as soon as I put the mask on, then it acknowledges it properly. So this cloner I shall change to step mode. Also, I'm going to put both these tracers, I don't know if this will work, but put both these tracers to uniform. 0 doesn't seem to make a difference, so we'll go back to none. Tracers, okay, cloner step, let's go 20, 11. Okay, so now every time it's drawing more, I think it's creating a new, it's going to occasionally create these new copies. Okay, so now that's fine. This is a proxy for eventually what will be clumps of sand on the edges. We can deal with that. The problem is that when it crosses over itself, those clumps of sand will continue just floating in space. So the next test is adding in a plane effector. And I still got this stuff kind of in order. I'd like to organize it a bit more, but let's just leave it our half organized, and then maybe later we clean it all up in the groups if need be. So plane effector. I would like this to scale uniformly in an absolute way to -100, and don't worry about scale. It's scaling everything down. What does it scale down? Well, it's going to scale down anything inside of the radius of that original spline right in the middle. So if we say that it has a radius, yeah, let's go to the radius of 10, and that's what these are. These are 10 apart. So let's say 9. So if it's, well, I guess it's even, oh, I guess 5 is probably the magic number here. As you see, they're now ignored if they're at 5. And then remapping wise, I'm going to crank this up. And now, yep, seems to be working. I'll put a, well, maybe we can just, I don't know if popping out of existence is a good idea. We'll do a little bit of a transition. So yeah, that actually, let's not assume. Let's see what happens. So right now as it draws, those are outside the radius. Like they're not close enough to that original line to be seen. But if it crosses over itself, it's suddenly inside that radius and it erases them out. So that's actually working pretty well. Yeah, that's not too bad. All right, now, given if these things are suddenly, well, these are now drawing on, they're getting randomly placed. Potentially, we've got some options to make them a little more random. If we do some offset and some offset variation, we can probably spread them out a little bit more randomly, but let's see how they pop into existence if they're still, no, that's why I was worried. As a line changes length, it's going to change the way that they're offset there. So we might not be able to definitively control as much randomness as I want. There's potentially certain options, but we might just end up putting in a bunch of nulls so that it'll randomly place them and that'll just give us that visual randomness. All right, now, what I would love for these to do is as they're born, they don't just appear, but they can move out from the ground and spin into existence is what I'd like them to do. Maybe easier said than done, though. Let us attempt. Think this is going to get a little bit crazy. Let's save that as a new version. It's a really cool question. There's a lot of different, very specific technical elements here, and it's really fun to try and do it. It's like we're not stuck on one thing, so it's kind of neat to continue forward. So these just pop into existence. If I were to add a MoGraph weight map, then all of these now have like a dot on them. Like they're red, which means are you selected? No. Inside of that weight tag, I can say use fields, and in the fields, I will, okay, I got to remember the recipe. If I say solid, they'll turn yellow. I would like a freeze set to add, auto update, not subfields. I don't know if subfields means, subfields must mean underneath. So maybe subfields, and I would like this to not grow. Maybe the max. I don't know. There's a lot of variables. So put the solid up to 5. And let's see if I can remember the recipe for, that's odd. Why is it even drawing it the way it is? It's very odd. Me not remembering the recipe is one thing. But the way those are appearing is strange to me. Oh, that might work though. No, are they born? Ooh, they're blinky. Normal. I'm gonna make another solid. Put the solid at the bottom, set that to normal, and make it black, just to give it some sort of baseline. This solid, put to 1%. Yeah, they're blinky. The idea is like when they're created, they come in red. And you see how this is slowly fading up to yellow? But I think we ran into this before where there's a blinking that happens, and I don't know where the blinking comes from. Because I want them to be born, and when they're born, begin to grow. And we could base that off this weight map, but it's seeing them really oddly. the way it's, and you also see how some of them are like, they're kind of born full yellow. It's like ones on one track are born full yellow and the others are red and then slowly fade up, but in a blinky way. And I'm not sure what to make of that exactly. But that kind of says that that doesn't work. Let me think. I don't want to have anything pre-baked because that's, well, it's not cheating, but it would be not helpful. I have a thought. There's not too many ways of making something fade up slowly. We could do some sort of spherical fall off. I can undo and get my mask back. So those didn't work. One thought would be, what if I make a spherical field and that will live inside of the stick. Zero it out. The spherical field we recently found out can be a little bit weird. Also, it's being seemingly weird now. I can't even see it. Where are you, spherical field? I zeroed it out. It should be right where that stick is. Well, let's see what happens. Let's even, this is still weird. Do you see how they're kind of like blinking? Could be the way the index works, but you can see how we are actually getting that spherical fall off right now. You see they're yellow nearby, but the frame that they're born, they are not. But let's continue tinkering for a moment. My thought was put that into a folder and we'll invert the output. So now, in theory, everything's highlighted. As it moves away, they're highlighted, but even inverting that, that's kind of blinking. But then, now that these are always red until it moves far enough away, and then if it turns yellow, you see those turn yellow, but as it moves closer, they're going to go back to red. But now, if we were to make a decay and set it to max, if they lighten up, they can't get dimmer again. They're always remembering the brightest they ever got. So when they're born, they should be fully red until the radius moves away far enough. And you see those start getting a little bit yellow. But then if it moves closer, as it does now, they stay yellow. That's a thought. Now, the radius is not displaying. I'm still not sure why, but let's start shrinking that down to 20. And let's map it up pretty far. I guess we want it to fade up. Are they? And why is one... You see how one line almost seems to be behaving and then the other one isn't? Why would that be? I mean, we can split this up into two separate lists of cloners if it works on one line and not the other. And we do have this weird spline mask set up. So I don't like that messy spline mask. So even though we do have two paths we need to trace, let's attempt to simplify by just tracing one of them. And let's just worry about one, and if it works, we can copy that rig, and there'll be one from the left and one from the right. That's the thought. So now you see these are kind of like snapping in. Now they are, I mean, seemingly that's working, but they're sort of snapping in because the spherical fall off is pretty quick. So then I would like to, that's a plane effector. Where's the plane effector? Here. So in the fall off, that's not the plane effector for me. Oh, it's all in the mask, sorry. So that's the decay. I'm going to say, yeah, that's all fine, but I actually want you to delay getting to that effect, and now it's set to the smooth, and now that what used to pop in, you see it now fades in? So we get that nice little fade in based on it moving away. That's the idea. And we want it to be pretty quick because you're supposed to move up as the stick is there. So this is mostly about the radius. And I don't like 100%, so let's do 99. So this radius, drop it to 10. Honestly, it might even need to be smaller than that, but those are outside of that radius. I don't know. Let's just work from that. So that's still one line, and as they're created, they're going to fade up relatively quickly as soon as the stick moves away. Well, it's something we can tweak. So save it. Okay, so now we've got the weight map. So this is currently scaling them away. So this is the tracer erase. So now let's give it something new, which is going to be them getting created. So a new plane effector. And even that, I think this one will calculate beforehand. So I'll add it before. And this one, there's always this inversion issue because I want them to not be there. So we might need to invert the output, which is potentially fine. So let's start out with just scaling. Nice and easy uniform scale from -1. Temporarily, I'm going to get rid of this erasing one so we can really focus in. And the fall off will just be based off of this weight. So let's just see what happens. Yeah, so now that you see they're scaling away, they suddenly appear and they scale away. We want the opposite. So let's see if there's a invert. Oh, there's that invert, but that's not good for us. So let's invert this result. Invert. But my worry, yeah, see, that's my worry. My worry was that they're going to appear full scale. They appear full scale and they're kind of getting that blip. That's it. I was half expecting that. It's just something that kind of happens. Can we invert the end result here? And if so, does it do us any good? I don't know. Let's try making a duplicate weight and dragging this one in and telling it to be based on the index. So that should be, turn off the plane. Let's just see if that's still working. Yeah, they're fading up. And then can I invert this? Invert. No, they're still born yellow. Let me think. Can we need them to be born correctly. So we know that eventually we need an inversion. So can we just do the entire thing inverted from the beginning? Like right now we're inverting the sphere, but what if we say, okay, don't invert that. And then we're not going to be locking to the maximum, but instead the minimum? Does that work? No, not really. Nothing's illuminating now. Well, that one's yellow, but then it faded away. I want these to be yellow in the beginning. So this is our setup. It's working perfectly fine, except we need the inversion of it, and that's not working. And then these are, the way these are fading in, if we just hit invert there, I don't think that works. Does it? Maybe it does. I don't know. Look, it's born yellow, and it moves away. They're fading out. Maybe just straight up inverting those works? It's hard to tell. So let's see if that's still feeding through. Nothing should have changed. So no, see, you still get that blink. There's that initial blink. It's working better, but you still get that first blink. Blink, 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 blink. It's like there's that frame where they exist and they haven't gotten these effects applied or something. One thing to check is does it render that way? That's a thought. So output all frames, don't worry about saving. We should see the effect pretty quickly. Yep, I definitely saw one. Right there. Blink, 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 blink. Okay, so it does render out. Dang, okay. What's next then? How do we stop that? I mean, I guess it probably works. Instead of inverting, so this is, I tend not to like working this way, but it actually makes it a lot easier to think about. Because if these start out with the full effect, if these start out with no effect and then slowly fades up, we don't get the pop. So these are fading away. Now, the problem here is that we are, we can scale down to an absolute 0. what we can do is the alternative, which is, you know what? The cubes start out really tiny. So let's just set those to like 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And then we say, okay, now this plane effector is not scaling them down, it's scaling them up. So scale them up to 10. Let's scale it up to 50. Why are they stretched? These are excellent questions. Because I didn't put one in, 0.1. Okay, so now you see that we're actually starting out very, very, very small, and they're scaling up. I don't like working that way because that means they're kind of already existing. But you can now see that they fade up, and we're not getting the initial pop. So that inversion is what was causing us the trouble. And we can still work from this. I was just avoiding it. And now, I mean, this situation works better than most because we can scale up from something pretty small. We just have to deal with the textures. But it's also going to be moving, is a thought. So these could be moving up, I don't know how far, let's say 5. So those move up from essentially the ground position. And now these are all just little cubes, but let's make a simple prototype of what this will eventually be. So an arc. Why? Oh, there it is. So let's see, not too big. Even 10 is going to be huge, but that should be fine for now. We'll make that and then make a null. Did I turn off my... No, I didn't. That's fine. So holding down shift, move this over 10. This arc can now pivot from that arc placed inside a sweep. Place that simplest thing. Actually, make a 4-side. Don't use those too often. And make that one skinnier, like so. Arc doesn't need anywhere near as many segments. No subdivisions. Uniform's fine. We'll put the 1. Okay, so that's sort of a little representation of our sand curled up. So, if that is now our cube, we'll see what our angle is like. Whoa, there. Oh, yeah, that's right. We need it to be really tiny in the beginning. I hate making things really tiny. I wanted it to be a default scale. So there's one thing we could potentially do to make it so we can work at a normal scale, and that is pre-scale this down. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this plane effector and name it pre-scale. So that will actually be the very first one to calculate, and I'm going to say, okay, it's a regular object. It's not super duper tiny. And what this one is going to do is scale it down to minus 0.01. So that hopefully will pre-scale it down really small, and then our plane can scale it back up again. But what we're seeing right now is not encouraging. This has the same fall off. Get rid of that. Okay. What's going on? If it has no fall off, and I'm saying to scale, oh, 0, minus 1, okay, minus 0.99. There we go. Why is it still falling off? This pre-scale. Okay, somebody explain to me what's going on. This pre-scale is the only effector we have turned on right now. Oh, is there? Oh, there we go. It's in the selection. I didn't know the selection made that fade in. Oh, okay, something to keep in mind. Okay, so now they're pre-scaling small, and now they get the scale up. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to everybody. So we can work at a regular scale, scale them down with this, scale them back up with that. And that we don't have to work from something really, really, really tiny. Okay, so these are actually currently curving the correct direction just by happy coincidence. I wonder if this pre-scale, that's going to move it up 10, or what are we moving up? It's moving up 5, so let's start out by having them go minus 5. So now they're slightly underground. So now they should end up directly in that line, and you see how they're scaling up on the line. And then let's get some rotation in there. Actually, we don't want, we might want pre-rotation, but let's not worry about that yet. These, let's get some, nope. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the one I want. And then under our pre, we counter rotate it. Maybe. feels a little weird. I'm not sure what happened there. Definitely felt weird. How do I... Not sure what... Well, let's not get bogged down in the weeds yet. Okay. Currently, they're scaling up really slowly. Obviously, it's way too slow. So inside of our weight, we have this delay. Actually, let's just turn off the delay and see what they do. So now you see they just pop, pop, pop. They pop into existence, and that's what this delay is doing for us. I love the delay. So let's put that down to like 5%. So they're going to scale up really quickly. But what we need those to do is do that based on this spherical field, which for whatever reason finally popped into existence. So I want to scale that way down, reset PSR. And essentially we want this happening like inside of that range. We just need it to be, this is making sure it's born one scale and then falls out of it almost immediately. So we don't want them to pop out of nowhere. Come on, the angle is terrible. I just can't see them coming in. Shoot, 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 shoot. So it's not the worst. It's kind of working. A lot of the mechanics of what we did, I like, but I gotta say, there's something about it that's just not doing it for me. I'm not sure what to make of it. So we can pull that arc way down, and we can mess with the scale, and I could pinch this down. But if we look here, like, I mean, I kind of did because you see these definitely have this curl to them. Is why I did that. You even pinch the tip down, and on this thing, we've got all those getting applied. We can also put the erase on, which should erase out when they overlap, hopefully. And then I can also add in another, let's add in a random. And I think, yeah, I'll put the random there. The random there. I like whatever one side says. I like the other one. This list to match that one, just so it keeps it clearer in my head. So don't randomize the position, although we could randomize it down a bit. So we can say randomly go down a little extra 5. Scale is the main one we want. They don't need to be uniform. Scale. And that's the big one. I don't want to get skinnier, so let's tell this random that it doesn't go minimum, or let's go down a little, but not too much. So mostly these will be going up. So those can get wider. And then randomly speaking, I guess a bunch of these could be rotated. And maybe even lead it. Yeah, I guess it's that one. Yeah, something. It's something. We'll worry about some of them being randomly in there and randomly not. Let's bring our other elements back in again and just kind of see where we're at. So we'll unhide these, reactivate them. This checkerboard is helpful, but a little hard on the eyes. So let's calm it down significantly. Okay, calm down. Okay, so womp, womp, womp. Why are those coming in upside down? Why are they coming in upside down? They weren't upside down a second ago, right? Nothing I just did should warrant those being upside down. Right? Why are they upside down? It's claiming that the random effect has got nothing to do with it. Nope, now they're vertical. I didn't even click and it just refreshed and went, yeah, it's going one way and then sometimes it goes the other. Well, that's wonderful. Without changing anything, it's a random roll of the die if it's going to be vertical or not. Yeah, well, it's something to do with the spline, the tracer, I'm assuming. If it's up or down. I got a way we can fix that. But I'm still not sure I like this as a process, so let's just reassess what we're looking at here. These are continuing to exist, even though this island is mostly erased out, so that's a bit of a problem. Like the major floaters will go away, but this one, you see, they didn't quite cross over, and that slight not crossing over meant they didn't get erased. So visually, we could end up with kind of these floating clumps. If we increase the resolution of our volume, that could be fine, like within a tolerable amount, but I'm not a big fan of that. And let's see, other things that are important, they're all also pushed down. Potentially, we could put these in the same deformer. If I put this in here, those should all, well, partially get deformed upward. They're getting deformed. Blurp, 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 blurp. Yeah, it's a neat rig as far as these things coming on the side, but it's just not working as well as I would want it to. The problem is I can't think of a better way of doing it. I mean, we've got this working, which is, you know, already pretty nice, but I would love to get something going along those. And then the rotation was actually going to be pretty important to me as well. So they could kind of rotate up, and that would give more of an illusion that this was pushing them up. That was the idea anyway. What to do about that? As they appear. Just for fun, let's try doing... I'm going to temporarily turn off that rig. And I suppose these are all components of it as well. Even, I mean, all of these are. So we're just going to turn that off for a moment. And let's just play with a volume solution. These are going to be kind of the most random of them anyway. So the let's create a brand new volume. Just duplicate that whole thing. There's even a new tracer. That's fine. And my thought is, if this volume has a slightly larger radius, it's going to be bigger. You see it inflates out. Let's even do 5.5. 5.5. And then we erase out a bunch of it is the main idea. So how would I do that? We could make a second tracer, and this tracer, I'm going to steal this plane deform and get rid of the fall off. And now what this is doing is deforming the points of the tracer upward. So if I just say like 1, then those are just getting pushed up by 1. Let's do more so we can actually see it. So you can see that that's there. So if in this volume builder, we now have 2 different unrelated tracers. So the second one, I'm just going to rename this one tracer up. so I can see it inside the volume builder. And that's tracer up. I can say a subtract. And now you see it takes a bite out of that. So that's the idea. Let's make it thinner for voxel 2. And also, let's see, we got some tweaks to do here. So go back to 6 so it gets bigger. So yeah, then we get some spikes on the side. That's kind of what I'm going for. And that tracer is doing a fine job of erasing out the top. The I thought this would be a little more coherent. Oh wait, the new tracer probably, yeah, that doesn't have that. So that should, oh, that didn't smooth out as much as I thought it would. But now I could make another tracer and call this one tracer down. And that's the same tracer again, but this one's getting deformed -3. So that should erase out a subtract again. So now we're only left with the stuff on the sides, which is kind of what I'm going for. Why don't I make the radius of tracer down even bigger? Bigger, 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 bigger. Okay, nice, 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 nice. That's kind of what I'm going for. So that exists all clumped up on the edges. The original tracer larger? Why? I guess it does work, but the volume. Yeah, I just want it to be smoother, but now we're getting pretty subdivided here, and they're still a little bit jagged. Not necessarily the biggest deal, but it's a thing. Okay, and now, so that's kind of creating this clumpy edge, or it's creating an edge for us. And then, let's look at the reference real quick. Yeah, that's not unreasonable. And then my main thought being, oh, a couple things. First of all, the tracer up, yeah, this could work. The tracer up is currently just getting deformed upward everywhere. And actually, right now, there's still, oh, this is still getting deformed based on the tracer. That doesn't need that. It should just be everywhere. And then this one also, no fall off everywhere. So then I can say, actually, it's not everywhere. I want it to be random. So let's add some random field noise. And now, yeah, now we get the shell. So this random normal noise is based on a noise. And let's temporarily turn off our volume. And we can see, you see how that we're getting this wiggly line? And that wiggly line is now saying, like, you know, it's taking the bite out of the top. So changing that scale, we can get some nice, hopefully some nice randomness on there. And now we can see we're introducing a bit of these curls into it. So that works. That works pretty well. So that little top one, maybe make the radius larger. Yes, yes. Not bad. I mean, there's going to be some floaters, and that's bad. This random noise. The voxel size is so small now on that. You see, we get pretty small voxels. I mean, the overall scene is small, but still, those are getting very detailed. The smaller we get, I don't know that we'd have any real floating islands if we drop our resolution enough. But let's do a couple things. Parametrically speaking, there's no way to erase out these floaters to be like, oh, just the main mass, return that, like not without making it editable, which obviously would break everything. Let's not worry about that quite yet. Tracer up, we got this random deform. A couple things. Okay, first of all, let's make a solid as well. Set the solid to add. So now it is moving everything up, and now I have a slider that I can, we have kind of a random and then an overall. So I can pull those back. And then, I mean, honestly, yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. Except I also, I don't think there's a way. I mean, here's our scale along. We don't want to mess with that because as it continues to grow, it will change. In fact, that's something I wasn't considering. But let's rewind this and hit save and make sure that this is drawing coherently. Okay, it is seemingly drawing coherently. And it still erases out properly, so that's really good. And you can see it even gives us this effect where it's kind of like pushing up in the front. So that's all of that is good. So now that we've kind of got this blob and we got options to play with it more, the how do I do this? Maybe inflate it a bit more. Take the original, a little more thickness, and then the tracer up. Deform upward more. Yep. Okay, it's very sensitive to where we kind of get some bridges and then where we don't get bridges. I would like some implied bridges. So now we get that. And then the final thought on this kind of concept here is overlaying this entire thing with a noise. So save, because noise is dangerous. We need a field. Why don't we make a group field, actually, which is always helpful. I've been using group fields more and more and more. Drop the group field inside, and the group field will be where they intersect based on the object below. Cool. Okay, group field. Now you're not... what's it doing? Why... well, let's see what happens. Okay, group field. You receive our noise field. Noise field, you are based on a noise. Let's go with something... I don't know, Naki. Naki's usually a good bet. I'm gonna make it quite vertical, like stretch it vertically, because I don't want, I don't want any more islands than I want as few islands as we can get away with. Now let's play with our overall scale. Once again, this overall seems relatively small, so I can drag this down, and we see how we get these little individual clumps doing their thing. And I could go infinitely, well, pretty much infinite here, and hopefully there's minimal floaters there. And yeah, pretty good. It's pretty good overall, I think. They seem scooted outside from the wall a bit, so let's fix that. I think those might be the down. No, it might be kind of nice actually to leave these. I guess they're a little bit above the ground, but we could keep on layering and layering and layering. But maybe both of these are too thick. Let's see. Let's grab the tracer up, and if we make that thinner, yeah, the thinner will work better there. I'm worried about the floaters still, but to a degree, I'm going to ignore the floaters because I don't have a great solution for that. I've got one thought, but no, it's not a good idea. And then let's see. Now that is like that, we have the option, depending on the way this geometry looks, of smoothing it in various ways. Well, first of all, we could do a smoothing here. That tends to really slow it down. But let's just see how it looks. So we'll create a smooth. Ooh, I just had a thought. What if we put a dilate and erode on there? Now that's an inflation, but if we say minus, if we do the correct amount of a minus, that could be a good way of like killing off floaters, just because if they're really tiny, this is just kind of going to erase everything a bit. So, that could be a thing. I mean, it didn't erase that one, but if we put the right amount, then now you see it did erase it out. But that might create another floater, so I don't know. It's a tricky one. Potentially you give this one a fall off as well to erase out the top ones, but it was just a thought. And then there's the open and close. And this, I don't play with this one too often, but this can be really neat for, like, let's see if we can see any good example. Yeah, you see like this hole right here? As we add this in, it's going to be like, you know what, let's try and close up that hole. And you see I can kind of column it down. So depending on if that's something you want, totally can be added in. And then you've got your smooth, as I was talking about. And the smooth is wonderful, but it is a very brute force tool where it's going to round everything out. This is very dependent on our voxel size. And once again, we're in a small scene, so these tiny scales are not that scary. If I cut that in half, you're going to see that we get a lot more geometry, which means I have more room to play with this smoothing. But looking at this overall, I don't think smoothing is something that's helping us out too much, so I'm not even going to worry about that. And then these are relatively smooth, but I honestly, I think I'd want to add some deformation in here to make them not smooth. So let's just kind of call that good enough for now and put in a deformation. So under our mesher, I'm going to select it, hold down shift as I add I guess a plane effector, which I will deform on 2 on Z, which is probably way too much, but it's going to deform the points, which is, yeah, already you can see it's inflating it a lot. So let's try 0.5. That's inflating everything by 0.5. And then under our fall off, that gets another random. And random, that's Perlin noise. We can try something crazier. Once again, Naki's a good go-to. It's quite large, but if I start pulling this down, you're going to start seeing a bunch of chaos introduced. I always like scaling this to a point of uniformity where we can see like a coherence to it. You can kind of see, if I pull it down too far, it gets a pure chaos and everything is random. But if we scale it up to, in this case, around 14%, you can actually feel like, okay, there's a lump, there's a lump, there's a lump. And so just this randomness, just adding that bit of imperfection where the sand was all getting pushed up, I think is probably a good thing. All right, well, that is, well, let's see how I imagine the speed's going to take a significant hit from how much we subdivided that. But let's see what we've got. Save. Play. It's going to be okay in the beginning and it gets slower and slower and slower, which is honestly not that big of a deal. It's the kind of thing you can easily fix, you know, or not even fix, but it's the kind of thing that you can just let the renderer deal with that as it, you know, gets created. So you see that we're getting like, you know, 3 frames a second, which is not amazing, but letting that draw itself out, it's doing a reasonably good job. And it even, like, you see how this is, it feels like it's pushing this out. So overall, I think this is a far better method. So let's call that good enough, and let's do a little bit of lighting and texturing and see if we can get this all to blend in pretty well. Yeah, Trey, Naki is definitely one of my go-tos. It's really good for patterned, controlled randomness. I like Luca quite a bit, but Luca is really chaotic. Like, you have to, it's kind of like no matter how big you get, there's still a lack of coherence. Some parts will and some parts won't, but on certain materials, I really like it. Now, I'm inclined just for, I mean, we've already been doing this for an hour and a half. So my thought here is probably just to go into Google and get some sand images, and we'll base it off of that. I'm immediately going to do redshift render because it's just going to make this look way better. But, you know, this was all vanilla cinema so far. So, and even, we didn't even need the recall. So I'm going to click remove recall tag. So yeah, let's grab a new window, search for sand, images, settings, advanced, well, we probably don't need advanced, tools, size, large, usage rights, Creative Commons. And that should give us something good enough. And let's see. That's very clumpy, but it's not bad. There's a lot of definition to it. I'd like something a little smoother. I mean, that's almost a little too boring. I want that perfect in-between sand. Ooh, like that. That's what I'm looking for. I'm assuming that this is clear to use because it said usage rights, Creative Commons. Oh, this is Flickr, which means it doesn't let you take, you can't right click on it. But we can screenshot. Bloop. Into Photoshop, new file, paste, and I'll move it over onto this monitor. Okay, so what I usually, first of all, it's clearly a little bit fuzzy, so I think we're safe to shrink this a bit. Image, size, I'll go to about 75%, 75%, I say, of that, and I think that we're not losing any resolution. And now we've done that, let's make it tileable. So, but actually, well, yeah, okay, we'll make it tileable and then tile it a few times to make a larger section of sand. So let's see. Okay, so duplicate the material, bake that one down. So I've got a duplicate of it, filter, and other offset. And if you haven't used offset, you probably have, but actually it's really hard on the material like this. Preview. Okay. I guess this material is not very large. Ooh, and the center point is like that. Okay. Better. Wow, okay, it's just by the nature of sand, it's almost impossible to tell where the seam is already. I can see it right there. Yeah, so you see there's the seam. So I don't think it's going to take too much work to make this tileable. There's a bunch of different things you can do. I like taking the magnetic. Ooh, so what's that? That's not magnet. That's magnet. If you take the magnetic tool, what's great is it's kind of finding the high contrast spots. It just gives you kind of like this natural jitteriness. So if I were to do that, that should give us some pretty good selections. And then let's see how well the healing or the patch tool works. I'm going to grab the patch tool and drag this, and you can see that we can choose a new spot to pull in a material. Let's see. Yeah, not bad. I guess one of the problems with that, hit undo. One of the problems with that is it definitely illuminated it a little bit differently. Do you see, is there maybe some settings in that? Because you see when I let go, do you see it's like, oh, there's a lighter patch, a darker patch, where those kind of weren't there before. That one's better than, that drag was better than the first one though. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I'm just going to do a patch there. And then we've got this whole line once again. I do like this selection trick. I'll make smaller ones though. Back to the patch tool. Not too much contrast on that one. Oops, that's fine. Deselect. Patch tool. And this is a tiny one I'll just grab. Over there. Boop. And right here. And grab there. And then a little, okay, so now the spot, there's a couple of lighter spots that I feel like are going to call attention to themselves. So I'm just going to select any spot that I think is calling a little too much attention to itself and erase it out a bit. Okay, with any luck, if we say filter offset again, it's going to be like pretty much impossible to find the seam. That's the idea. I don't know if that's a seam, but I'm going to hit it real quick. Bloop. Ooh, I did not like that one. Better. Yeah, okay, let's call that good enough. And then now what I like to do is, yes, we just did that. But even right now, if I squint a bit, I can feel like there's a darker patch right there, and there's a lighter patch right there. Definitely, like there's a little bit of shifting on that. I'd love to do is remove that. First of all, I'll collapse that layer down, duplicate a brand new layer, and then here's what I usually do. Let's kill the color off. So hue saturation, kill the saturation. Okay, and then filter blur, Gaussian blur. And now what I'm going to do is increase this until, do you see, right now you can kind of see, it's like, okay, well, it looks fine. But now as I go further, you start seeing that all the small details go away, and then the medium details go away, and now we're just left with these larger blobs. And now if I increase it just a little bit, now we're getting left by, like, look, there's a darker blob there and a lighter blob there. So that's what I want. So I've done that. We could increase our contrast. So I can, if we want, we can crank this up to like maximum. And so now you can definitely see like the differences in tone there. And then I usually would pop open the blur again and just add in enough blur so that the banding goes away. And now invert, Control I, I've inverted that image. And if I set that to overlay, I can now start pulling down my opacity until I get like that perfect midpoint where lighter areas are becoming darker and darker areas are becoming lighter. So now I'm doing this overlay, but now look, if I turn it off, do you see darker patch right there? But if I turn it on, the darker patch feels like it kind of disappeared. So that's another trick I like to do. Now I might have broken the tiling on that slightly. I'm just not going to worry about it. Okay, so let's call that good enough. I mean, and I've done that multiple times at different points, and I've even, you can do techniques where you do kind of a large scale one, a medium scale one, a small scale one to like really flatten it out. But I kind of want to maintain some of the depth here. So selecting the image, let's, I'm just going to C for crop, and let's tile this a few times. I'm going to make it just overly big. How big did I just make that? Come on, Photoshop. I'm going to hit escape. Oh, looks like it baked it down, so there we go. I'm just gonna make it way bigger than I need it to be. And I did copy it first, so now I can paste it in. So now I will manually tile it a few times. yeah, I hate some of the zooming and stuff in Photoshop is a bit of a pain. So duplicate, move it up, duplicate. I'm just saying Control J, duplicate. That should be saved to bake, 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 duplicate, copy, duplicate, copy. You know, I'm just going to do 2, so that's a little more square. I mean, the more square, the better for us. But now you can see a little bit of tiling on that, which is kind of what I was going for, or you know, the reason why I did this. So let's crop that in. Bake, bake, bake. That's fine. And now that we see a little bit of this tiling, we've now made a larger overall pattern. So if I were to duplicate this, I always like to keep an extra layer below. So now let's just get rid of some of the blatant patterning we're seeing on this larger scale one. And now we've made something that's like 6 times the amount of detail that we had. And we're breaking up this pattern. I'm just going to do it real fast. This white patch, I feel, will call attention to itself. So, you know, that's there's a darker patch. Yeah, I mean, you can go chasing this stuff all day. And the patch tool is definitely, maybe there's some settings I could tweak on it, but every time I use a patch tool, it's like creating like areas of contrast a bit. So like there's a lighter patch and I can go and try and find a replacement, but you see how it kind of darkens one side and lightens the other. I'm not entirely sure what the cause of that is. But now even that we've done that, we've kind of hid that a lot of the tiling, not all of it. In fact, here's something that's kind of neat. This should be tiling. So if I duplicate it again, let's do another offset. So I'll say filter other offset. And let's just, it's going to be really hard to find a pattern here. So hopefully I'm not, oh, yeah, I see one there. Get that centered. Okay, cool. Now, do you see, I kind of see this pattern coming through there. I think right there and there are the seam. So let's grab that magnetic lasso tool. I'm just going to go and select what I felt like was a tile. And if I just hit Control X and cut that out, we're seeing straight through it to the layer below. And we can do that on a couple of offending areas. And now it's kind of its own. I didn't like that one so much. Cut. And yeah, so that's the idea. I can now bake that one down. If I want, I could duplicate again. Let's do, actually, before I duplicate, I'll do another offset, file offset. So it's kind of a random offset. Duplicate the layer and do another offset. And now find patches that stand out again. So like that one's dark. Cut. Oop, cut. That's interesting. Oh, well, it looks like the way I tiled. Let me just do that again. Is there a hole through that? There might be a hole in that. I'm not sure. Bake it down. Duplicate. Oh! Well, no, that one's fine. Duplicate the whole layer. Offset. It looks like, based on my tiling, that just happens to be hitting the same spot. So I promise we're almost done with this material, but I think putting the work in is, hopefully these are neat details that people didn't already know. I'm just trying to make sure that spot's not lining up with the one that was above it. So once again, if I don't like that spot, cut, we see the layer below. Cut, we see the layer below. And even tiling wise, you see we kind of see this line, line, line. So why don't we just grab that middle one, get rid of it, and now that's going to really help hide that tiling as well. So, you know, those are just some of the techniques that I like to do. Now, this is sand, so I think it's a slightly more forgiving material. Like some, I would be being a lot more careful with the selections as we went around. And we could duplicate this process several more times for sure, where I don't even, you know, let's see, maybe we will do one last version of this because this is the quick one. So once again, C for, come on, letter C, select all, give us enough. Oh, it's going to be weird. So first select all, copy, C, pull out, make it so it's enough to double, paste, and now I can put that one in the corner, duplicate, bake down, duplicate, and now I've doubled it again, C, crop, And now, once again, you can now see tiling again, but at this larger scale. So baking that down, duplicating again, and I don't even know if direction is an issue on this, but you know, there's so many. Oh, come on. Oh, it looks like I hit some camera raw button. Go away. How do I close that? Cancel. Probably should save this. I haven't saved it yet. Bum, 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 bum. Scene files, new folder, texture, sand. Okay, so now I've got this image. I could grab it and spin it 180, so now it's like very different. And then also offset it. Filter offset. Now let's get a different, I just want these lined up on a different line. Yeah, that's pretty good. So yeah, now where I see those tiles, again, long selection, cut to the layer below, cut to the layer below, cut to the layer below, and then bake down, duplicate, filter offset, definitely feel the tile right there, cut to the layer below, cut to the layer below. And now, you know, every time we do this, we're just making it so that the tiles stand out less. And then we've got some extra tricks we can do once we're back in Cinema, which we're heading towards now. So save again as a, we'll do a PNG. And it's still in the same folder. Save, okay. Saving, done. Back to Cinema. Okay, so let's make a, I'll save this as a new version because we're about to go into Redshift. And I want to make sure that everybody knows ABCDE _ RS for Redshift. Save, okay. Create material, create Redshift material. This is just what I reached for. We could use the new material, or the Cinema material nodes for it, but now I'm already here. Texture. And let's load in our image, general, 18, scene files, texture, sand, open. Okay, there's our sand. That will go into the diffuse. And I know it's like bad practice, or you know, it'd be good to make a better one, but let's just search for a bump node, and we'll just feed the same texture into the bump. We can probably put a noise in here as well, which I think we'll probably do. Put that to the input, output this to the input, overall bump, and immediately that breaks that apart. It being pretty shiny is probably not a bad thing. So let's begin by putting this onto our sand flat. Now it gets booled out, so this actually gets applied to that. Yeah, so this object is what we want to have there. I know the original material wasn't quite square, but I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to not worry about scaling it. I'm just eyeballing it to be the appropriate amount of tiling. Redshift, lights, dome light. Let's go and download an HDR. Why not? We're kind of going nuts on this one, so let's go all the way. HDRI Haven. HDRI Haven has great free HDRs. So let's go for a nice sky. And is there anything that looks kind of beachy? Like the beach. We'll just grab that one. Why not? Let's see. We don't even need super crazy. So let's just do the 2K one. Save file. Oh yeah, I always use Chrome. I use Firefox for streaming, but it has now gone into my download folder. I'm going to track that down in a different folder, and I'll pop it up on the screen in a moment. Let's see. Downloads, HDR, copy. I won't be able to include this in the scene files, but you now see where I went and got that. So, in fact, why don't we, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to save this link into the scene files folder, so if anybody wants to go get that, you can get it from the source. Scene files, actually we'll put it in here. Yeah, I'll just manually link. Okay, so now, dome light, load, up a layer, that's where I put mine. Oh, that's the link. Up another layer, there we go. open, and I can say, no, don't copy the file over. So that's where that link will be broken. Okay, so we got a dome light. It's in now. Save. Redshift. Render view. Get that going. Once again, it gets really tough to, I don't have like a default layout for this. So we're just going to have to deal with fighting the screen a bit to get it working with, you know, us doing this on a stream and having, instead of being on 2 monitors, I'm stuck on this one for the purposes of the live stream. Okay, so I feel like I might have even tiled that too much. So that's a good thing because it looks pretty good. So let's tile a 4x4. Still looks pretty nice. I think the bump is acceptable. Now, let's break up this pattern a little bit. So if I zoom out, you can't, do you see how we see this tile line there? We see that tile line there. Like technically we can see the tiling. One thing that can help is like rotating the entire thing a little bit, but I do want to see this displacing, so I can't do a cubic map on this part. But what we can do is go into the material, and this is a super simple trick, but I really like doing it. Let's make, well, let's search for a Maxon noise. I'm not sure where they called it a Maxon noise, not cinema, but there you have it. Let's drag that out to the output. I don't have a shortcut set up right now. And let's get a material that should work here. So even Luca would work okay, but we've been using a lot of Naki. Well, Naki's not the best for this situation. Maybe Luca would be good here. So Luke, no, Luca's too swirly. I don't know. Maybe Naki does work. We just need to make it smaller. So back to Naki. Overall scale. I always forget if we go up or down. Okay, we go down, so let's drop that to 1. Let's drop it to 0.1. And I think I might invert it. So let's grab our high clip, low clip, and switch it. Ooh, you know what? Sorry, Naki. I love you in general, but you're not doing it for me now. Over. No, definitely not over. Turbulence is okay. FFB. Where's FFB? Or FBM, sorry. FBM is usually pretty good because it's like a noise layered on top of a noise on top of a noise. So it's kind of like an infinite noise, and that gives you just kind of a nice breakup pattern. So yeah, this is my thought. Let's make 2 of them. So I'm gonna make 1. So that's that one copied. And let's make another one that's pretty small, so 0.1. So that's this one, okay? So then searching for a layer. Here's a redshift color layer. So this material will be our base layer, and we'll take this one as a secondary layer, and let's output those. So if I say that the secondary layer should overlay on top of the first one, then now you see we're getting dark and light spots based on that noise pattern rather than, well, so that's a really strong overlay. Let's pull it back like a lot. I want to just barely see it. And then let's pull in the secondary one and do the same thing. Layer. And turn on layer 2 and set that also to overlay. Possibly some other modes would be fine, but this is a good quick one to do. Pull that down. Let's see. I think we pull that one up a bit extra. So by doing that, we've made it almost impossible to find that tiling pattern we were seeing before, because now we've got larger patches of light and dark, and those are what's going to catch the eye. That's the idea behind it anyway. Yeah, so there's that. Is there anything? Let's pipe that through into the material color. Let's pipe that into the final. And now we actually get this. I might want to lighten, well, we've got our new environment, and the sound's looking okay. We could get a color correct, and maybe crank this gamma up a bit just to brighten it a bit, maybe even a little extra saturation. But those overlays, I think, pulled back on those, so like a little bit brighter. And let's do 1.3 on the saturation. A little saturation goes a long way, but yeah, I like that a lot more. Okay, so a little saturation, pops that back out again. And okay, cool. So that is the material applied overall on, let's zoom up, see if it looks good up close. It's not bad. Let's maybe invert the bump. So bump, let's go 1, 2, 0. Yeah, I like that a little bit more. Like I said, it's not a dedicated bump map, but it is what it is. So yeah, zooming out a bit, and that's our sand. Then we've got this sand pit here, But what I'm thinking, we don't have a good solution for that. We could do a flat projection, but to be perfectly honest, I think we'll just go with cubic on both these clumps and that. Because as they're morphing, they're kind of colliding with our stick. And the hope is we just won't see it. I am feeling a little bit of a pattern there, but I just don't. Oh, actually, I remember what I was going to do. We're going to put a little bit of noise in the bump. And that should help break that up as well. Not much. We can do a bump blender, so let's make a duplicate. And we've got our nice secondary FBM noise. If we feed that through as a standalone, let's see what that does. Yeah, look at these nice patterns. I call a little bit of attention to themselves. I like that. So now we've got search for the word bump again, and there's a bump blender, and I say, hey, I want base and layer 0, and so that's layer 0. I want to do full weight on that one. If we say additive, then the two just get combined, and we get both bumps. And this one's a bit strong, so I'll say 0.5 on our noise-based one. Maybe even less. A little goes a long way. 0.2. Well, that's interesting. It's behaving, maybe the additive doesn't quite, oh, maybe I should feed it through. And let's see what we get. Yeah, so that's that bump, and now 0.25. Yeah, that calms that down a bit, but I think it's helping break up the pattern. Okay, it's just another little something. Okay, now apply that same material to our sand ditch, and that one will be a simple cubic. We could go fancier, but let's just say cubic times 2 times 2. And let's just try and get this to be approximately similar. I wonder if the normal is flipped because it's the inside and the outside. I think it is. It's a good way to fix that. I'm not really thinking of one, but it does flip the norm. It flips the bump backward. Yeah, 5 by 5 seems to match the closest, and we can tile it. It's not unusual when I do a cubic mapping, which is kind of like if you're just doing things quickly, but I usually just rotate it to like a slightly offset angle so that the tiling becomes less apparent if you're doing cubic mapping, and that can now just be copied onto our what do we call these? I'll just call them the crumbles. Those are the sand crumbles. And I don't have a good default stick material. It's not bad. Now, let me think. Now that, the bool and this shape, there's no correlation between them, I don't think. So like, I think there's occasionally maybe going to be a little bit of a gap in them. I'm mostly inclined to like just kind of ignore that. And also this outer thing is not very subdivided, but if I subdivide it, I'm worried it's going to break up this pattern. Inside of the render view though, you can see, here's what I'm talking about. Do you see like this right there? Like this is very little geometry right there, so it's getting real crumbly, and I'd like to subdivide that. Let's just see what happens if we throw in a subdivide, but I don't think it's a good idea. Subdivide. Well, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. There might be slightly worse gaps in the edge, but they're going to mostly fall in the shadow. And then I guess there's going to be a bit of a harsh edge between them. We could do another layer to hide that, but let's just call it good enough. Now, I would like to take a quick peek at our original reference. That's not the original reference. Here's the original reference. I was wondering if the sand inside is a little bit darker. It doesn't really seem to be. It might just be shadow. It's just not catching the light. Maybe there could even be like a little bit of subsurface to like get some light passing through. Yeah, triplanar. I'm not an expert in triplanar. I should probably do it. At some point, but these different chunks are blending in very nicely. I'm just hoping that they don't like appear out of nowhere. Let me think. Anything we can do to give it a little bit more life? I might. I don't want to do subsurface scattering. That'll take too long to render. But maybe we could sneak in a little bit of backlighting, which actually goes a really long way sometimes, but it either works or it doesn't. So let's just put a little bit of backlight. You see everything suddenly becomes a lot more illuminated, and that's not terrible. And if we feed the same sand material, maybe a modified version of the sand material, it's a good fake. If we had more time, I would do it, but input that into the color correction, and then we'll feed this into, I can never find that one, so we'll just drag backlight color out, feed that in, come on. Okay, so that should take on the color at least, and now let's just kind of A-B that. So if we put a lot, it should like super blow it out, but you know, it just feels a little warmer and the light comes through, so we're gonna go easy on it, but a little bit of something should, you know, make it feel a little warmer, a little more inviting. Okay, is there really much more to do? I mean, like putting a bunch of displacement inside of this, I think could be nice. Should we take a few minutes and do that? It's not a bad idea. And it's all running relatively quickly, so save it. I mean, it's already not going to run in real time. We hit play, so let's spend an extra minute, because why not? I'm going to pause the renderer so that that's not slowing us down. Okay. Can I just increase the resolution of this? Because this is both the sand ditch and the sand, so this is going to make it more accurate. So if I drop that down to 2, that should make that more accurate, a little more rounded. But then, you know, we probably even go down to 1. Yeah, and that's just going to become sharper. And now that that is sharper, I would like to just create some displacement on it. We already did some nice displacement on these chunks, so that's the idea. We'll steal a copy of that into the sand ditch. That could mess certain things up, but let's just see what happens. It's not super high resolution. I suppose that's not doing much, so can we subdivide it by 1? I'm going to try subdividing it by 1 and then run this on the subdivided one. And it seems kind of subtle, so I'm going to crank up the amount of displacement. Yeah, now you can see the displacement, so that breaks up that. Now it's going to mess up this top edge, and I was kind of hoping we could fade it out. That might just pass through the other wall, and honestly, it just might not be a problem. And then, actually, what we could potentially do, we got to figure it out, but can we make this go positive and negative? So I'm going to say positive, negative inside the random noise. I'm going to say, yes, you also go to -100. There we go. And now it pushes in and out, so this should kind of split the difference a bit. And it should just mess up the ground a little bit. Let's see if that looks any better. It's not bad. I think all that work we did, like the displacement on the corners, that was like a silly amount of extra work, but let's just see what we've got here. I'm going to kill that, set this up render-wise. So let's see what we got. Redshift, save, redshift, advanced, 0.1, that's really slow. So I'll say, oh, 0.01 is really slow. We'll do 0.1. And then all the other defaults are fine defaults. Like these are good generic go-to. Maxon, as far as I'm concerned, did a good job of giving us some defaults. No motion blur or anything. We don't need to worry about that. I am a big fan of the post effects. I've been using them a ton. And when the new plugin comes out, you'll be seeing all the renders have tons of those. So if we were to pick a nice angle here, and let's ignore the background, but you know, just spending a little bit of time and jumping into the redshift post effects, and I mean, I don't think anything's going to catch. Oops, I don't think anything's going to catch a nice bloom. But let's just see if we can, or do a not bokeh, but yeah, we can do bloom or a flare. Let's try streaks. I just want to see how far we have to push in and what it looks like. So as we pull it down, nothing super bright because we didn't put any super shimmers in there. Yeah, essentially everything's going to be affected or none of it's affected. So unfortunately, that's not a big deal. But it would be great to get like little glints off particular bits of sand that were catching our eye. The main one, though, I love is exposure. Like if we turn on exposure, then we can, you know, brighten up the overall scene and dim it and then crush the blacks a little bit and really let those sink in. And just, you know, it's a good way of doing a lot of post-processing quickly. I would That sharp edge is bothering me a bit. I'm trying to think of how to fix that. How do we fix this sharp edge? What's an easy thing we can do? Because that's going to bug me. I mean, I don't think it'll take too long to think of something to do with that. So we got that edge. I don't want to play everything in volume because we still have that displacing pretty well. Kind of what I'm inclined is, do we have those? We still, did we delete? We didn't delete. We still have the AB splines. So if we still trace the AB splines, I could feed those into our volume. We'd still need to subtract the center one. I guess that might be slightly more work. Not too much work. Let's just do it for fun. So we've got our crumbles. Here's our volume. So if I put A in, and we'll just do this after the fact, I think is safe enough. So there's A. Density 4. I want that to be 0.2. Why does it seem so... Oh, what's going on? It's not... I don't know if this could be a bug. Did I drag it in? Let's just make it a child. There's a thing that happens if you remote link certain things but make children a thing as well. So I'm just going to drag that in as a child. A 4. Set that to 11. 0.3. There we go. It's a little low, but we can fix that. We can fix that by deforming it upward. Tracer up, deform. We don't want too much randomness, but we'll push it up. And it's really B that's giving us the better one. So let's drag B in here and work from that. Union B 11 3. Oh, 3 I say. Why are we not getting that bit of edge? That's the one I really wanted. Anyway, those two go into a folder. And that's a union with a union with a union. And then we need a duplicate. And hopefully it doesn't yell at me. I guess we can just make another one, but we need a duplicate of the original tracer. Didn't yellow. Subtract. And set that to 6. 5. Ooh, wait. Why are... That tracer... What just happened? I gotta undo. I don't know what happened, but I don't like it. Okay. Redo. Okay. Tracer. I want the original tracer there. Yes. That seems correct. But I want it to subtract these results. If I shrink it, ooh, why is it? I'm in a folder, so all these effects I'm doing should only be happening in this folder, and then the result of the folder should be affecting everything else. But instead, it seems to be separate. I don't know what the deal is. So you know what? We're going to keep it real simple. That's the builder. That's the renderer. We're just going to duplicate it. Boom. So this one doesn't get that or the folder. And this one gets rid of everything else. Womp, 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 womp. Why did that not work? That's just weird. All right, well, I don't want to lose a thread here at the end because everything's been going well. So I'm not. There's been a thing that I've noticed with volumes lately that they don't like. See, I feel like by dragging this tracer in, I'm gonna undo until that one goes away. It's like by dragging that tracer in where it's acting somewhere else kind of is spoken for now. So I'm going to try a workaround, which is just making another tracer. And now, so there's a completely unrelated one. And this completely unrelated one can be dragged in and put in there. And this unrelated one needs enough of a radius, which I think is 5. And then subtracts. And now it's behaving itself. So now that's erasing out the floaters that were there. And now at least I've got a bit of an edge here. Now I have to grab these 2 deforms, and there's all that noise. I'm going to say, I mean, I like the noise, but I don't think we need much of it. How's that look? It's floating a bit. 2. 3. I don't know why that initial one's not there. It might just be where the initial twirl happens. Rewind all the way. And I want to see everything, but these volumes are going to super slow us down. So let's turn that one off. I think the rest of them will run well enough. Save. Hit play. Now, that's still calculating. It's just not drawing the volume, and the volume is the thing that takes a long time. So I just want to let this run for a little bit, and we'll just see what result it gives us. And yeah, you can see that pink line doesn't originally trace that first bit of an arc. It's just like the initializing. So once again, if we knew where we were beginning, then that would be completely acceptable. Anyway, I'm just picking my render angle now. I don't know where everything eventually goes, so let's just frame it up like this so we'll see a bunch. Make sure that the lighting looks okay from here. We'll spin around our light if need be. It'd be nice to texture up the stick, but for now, that's completely fine. I think the lighting could probably spin. Nope. Not render region. Rotate. More drama. More drama. Yeah, how's that look? That ridge right there, oh, it's so specific. It's calling itself out so much. I don't know, is it better than nothing? I'm not sure. I'll just move it down a hair, and then we'll call it good enough. So that is these 2.5 womp. That creates a little bit of a lip. I mean, I don't like how much it's overhanging there. There's things we could do to fix it. Actually, the easiest thing we do to fix it is just increasing this radius enough. Let's try 5.5. Can we cut that? Oh, too much. 5.2. Better. 5.3. Yeah, that chops off some of it. 5.25. Oh, I mean 3.5. I think this is as good as it's going to get. Okay, I call that good. Let's check our render settings. Output, I didn't give it a path yet. All frames, we'll just stop it when we want to. 1920 by 1080. Lock ratio, divide by 2. Save. No TIFF. But I will save it as a TIFF sequence in episode 18, renders, new folder. This will be 1E underscore redshift sand drawing. Alrighty. Inside, oh yeah, once again, 1E underscore redshift sand drawing. Save. Close, save, render, and we'll let that go for a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. I do expect, actually, we should definitely do that. Let's rewind a few times. You know how the tracers like to reset, and they can be goofy if you don't reset them all the way. So we're just going to do that. 1 frame forward, 1 frame back, and then hopefully that's kind of reset them better. Start the render again. We don't have those 2 dots at least. And I think it shot out. Yeah, you saw this line. It was like this thing's a DeLorean. But now we're here. Let that render a few frames. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. And let me check out the chat. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, as long as, I would not have spent anywhere near as much time on this if we weren't kind of shifting from like concept to concept to concept. So while this was one question, it was just a picture or just a video of somebody drawing in the sand for real. If this was just trying to draw like the whole time, we would have spent like a half hour and moved on. But there kept on being all these little individual rigs we could go and tackle, which is why I kept going further and further on it. I definitely feel like, well, I'm curious to see now that we're rendering, if we do see the displacement of the sand, if it does scoot off to the side a little bit. If that effect comes through, then awesome. If it doesn't, then that initial ground plane and the volume, those could have been merged into one model, and then we could have mapped that directly. And then those corners would actually be connected, and we could have potentially done some sort of displacement there because those actually would have been a shared edge. And then all those extra layers I just did at the very end, those could have just been part of that original model. I don't know that would have been a good idea, but potentially you could even put, if those were one model, you could even just put a parametric bevel on there, and it might catch that edge and round it out enough to look okay. And I think there's kind of enough chaos happening with the sand in general that, that could potentially be acceptable. Is there any like real way to do a proximal in Redshift? Because I know there's fake ways, but those fake ways don't do what I want them to do. And I don't want to use a vertex map. I just want something that finds a radius fall off based on other objects, like literally the proximal from Cinema. Is there anything directly like that? Because it would be pretty cool here, because you know how sand reacts depending on if you put pressure. Like when you step on wet sand in the beach, you'll actually kind of see it deform and change color because the saturation changes. It would be cool using a proximal that we could do that here, where we could actually have it look a little bit more wet where the stick is or where the stick isn't. We could also have a gradient here so that the sand could be more wet as we went down, which would be, I think, pretty neat. And we could also, you could also just put a layer of wetness where there's literally water below a certain level, and that could just be passing through as well, which could be a neat effect added on top of that as well. The C4D node will let you use any physical render feature like proximal. Does it actually work though? I think I've tried using proximal through the, and do you mean the C4D node? Is that just the shader node, or is it a different node? I'll check real quick. Redshift, material, bump bump. You said there's a C4D node? C4, oh, okay, so yeah, you said C4D node, and I said shader, so it's a C4D shader node, so both. I'm pretty sure I've done a test with it here, and it didn't work, but maybe it will. Maybe I tested it with something else. So I'll try that again in the future. We're definitely not going to implement it right now. It's not taking too long to render. You see the actual frame is cranking through pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, no part of this is taking terribly long, but it does seem to be, it's about 10 seconds per frame, which is, incredibly reasonable, all things considered, but it's not the quickest thing while we're sitting here waiting. I also don't expect the first couple frames to look that good because the stick is out of the sand. I didn't think about it, but I think the rig, as we've set it up, is there anything in it that wouldn't just work? I think that we might be able to just take the stick and move it up, and then it won't be affecting the sand, and then drop it down into the sand, and it will start working because it's all based off of tracers. So it might just automatically work. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure about how to deal with those floaters. I said we're just going to ignore them, and I did. But you can definitely see like there's one little floater right there right now. And I'm not sure exactly what to do with them. I mean, we could change the rig up a bit so that they're less likely to happen, but to do it in an absolute way, I can't think of one. Let's see. Abdo, yeah. Curvature map is potentially would have given us some extra places to work. I'm really curious how I don't want to hit play until we've got a couple of seconds here. But as a still, like these clumps of sand are actually blending in incredibly well. They feel like clumps of sand, and I mean, it's not like they're seamlessly blending in. Like that's not even what I was going for, but they feel like chunks of sand that were wrenched out of the ground. When it's actually playing, we might see them passing through the cubic noise, which I don't know how good the effect is going to look one way or the other. And then we've got that displacement sand. I could have subdivided it more because I do feel there's still a distinct like hard line right there. Potentially a layer of smoothing. Maybe even a smoothing deformer inside of the subdivision surface afterward could have smoothed this out just to be one more level. But I mean, it's not bad, but I definitely see a line. I'd rather see it from a slight change in like highlights rather than a hard geometry line. But this is a lot better than the geometry line we were going to be, than the hard line we were going to be getting. And then all that work we spent trying to get that rig going with the those clones on the edge, and it's like, wait, let's just use another volume builder, and it works and looks so much better. Like there's so much randomness built in there, and I really like that like tracer inside a tracer inside of a tracer to get a big tube, erase out the top of the tube, erase out the bottom of the tube. All that worked really well. Oh yeah, we never inverted the normal down there either, so the bump is backwards in this pit, and that's also not helping with that transition between the two. I don't know. I really wish there was a built-in invert normal. Like from a coding point of view, this got to be incredibly simple. It'd also be neat to, I guess it would be creating dynamics. That might work, but it also might be neat to like create a small emitter, that the emitter could be creating just little spheres that are displaced. And so it's kind of like as this moves away, you'd see like occasional little like clumps of sand kind of fall from around this corner into it. Like, right, yeah, look at this one. See, this is where I was talking about. The transition looks really nice, where this is pretty seamlessly going from there up to there. It might not look good in motion, but it looks really good as a still. The sand, and we could have spent 10 times longer on any aspect of this, but we spent a little bit of time making the sand material better tileable. I still would have probably done a couple extra layers on there, and then potentially there's a better, I didn't look for it, but like Cronal might have been a really good shader to put on to create the bump, because or maybe one of the Voronoi noises would have given us really nice bumps to put on there. They wouldn't line up with the sand grains, obviously, but they would have possibly given us better glints on here. And if we did get the glints just right, and then probably put something really small and bright in the distance to catch those highlights, we might have been able to get it to actually create glints in the sand. That would be really cool. All right, well, it's more than 2 seconds, so let's see what the motion looks like so far. You know what? It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Like the build up there was better than I would think it would be. There's a little twitchiness here in some of the corners, but like I said, those aren't welded, and based on the rig we made, we could definitely make those, that the pit and the top of the sand one mesh, which would, be a good idea. And I think that would get rid of some of that jitter. But yeah, that arcing up was really important, because like that's one of the best looking parts right there, is you can kind of feel that movement forward. Putting we should have put some noise in there, where right now we were curving up based on the fall off of one of the tracers. but it would have been better to put a little bit of noise in that, so they're not all moving up the exact same amount, and that would break up like this hard line here could be a little bit more varied. Yeah, there's a couple things we could do to improve it, but you know what? Overall, that's pretty good. And considering it's just cubic mapping on these the chunks, could have been worse. Yeah, the corners are still bothering me. That just is what it is. There's something about it is really jittery. Maybe one of the last layers I put in didn't have enough samples on the tracer. Yeah, we can just let this keep rendering. I'm going to check the chat, see if there's any questions. I'll kind of answer those, but we're already a half hour over on a single question. As a seagull. Let's see. Excellent. Well, everybody seems happy with it. The Aniket. Apologies if I don't have the pronunciation correct, but I do have a espresso tutorial for Rocket Lasso. I made a bunch for Grayscale Gorilla back in the day, but if we head over to Rocket Lasso YouTube, actually this is going to be my signed in version, so let me check this before I open it. Rocket. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to mute this. I've got this tutorial. Oh, my bigger beard. I've got an espresso tutorial here that is a little more, it starts out from nothing, but it's kind of a cool couple advanced techniques. So if you haven't seen this one, I can definitely recommend it. Here's a link to that one, everybody, if you want to see. Yes, Tobias, thank you for linking to the Slack channel. Everybody should head on over to rocketlasso.com and make sure you, well, just kind of come and hang out on the site in general. Put a lot of work into the site, but then you can head to the community page and click on join us on Slack, and then come and hang out on Slack. And there's all these different challenges that are happening. And articles getting written, and people helping each other. And while you're at it, make sure that you click on the link to join the newsletter. And I think you get that from, I guess any of the pages probably has it at the bottom. Yeah, you can click to join the newsletter, and I'm going to be doing the announcements of the new plugin, like on next Wednesday is the plan. And let's check this out again. Yeah, it's still going through, still looking about that good as it animates through. So this might be one of the most complete animations we've ever put together from scratch on any live stream I've ever done. So, and everybody seems to have liked it. As long as we're moving forward and it's looking good, then people will tend to be happy, I guess. Yeah, I can think of dozens of things to do to improve it, especially since we end up doing more stuff with volumes. But overall, very, very pleased with this. I'm going to be even more excited next week to be showing everybody the brand new tool, the new spline tool from Rocket Lasso. But that covers it today. I've got a lot of work to do getting that thing wrapped up, packaged up, recording all the tutorials for it, the help page, the web page, the sales page, the actual sales, all the marketing images, building the commercial. I've got to do all that pretty much before the end of Tuesday. So there's a lot to do, as well as prepare live stream presentations. So this should be, that's going to be a fun week. I'm actually looking forward to it. We've been working really, really hard on this tool, so it's going to be great to get it out there into the world. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out today for another live stream. That's going to wrap this one up. I'll see everybody next Wednesday for the unveiling of Rocket Lasso's second ever plugin. So that'll do it, and bye-bye, everybody.